it was that vibe, like create, like focus on just like creating things and like getting them out there and deploy, like anybody could deploy.
This is What the Jam, an interview series where we're finding out what's next for Jamstack. Find out more at thefutureofjamstack.org.
We're back with What the Jam. I'm here with Queen Raae. She's a developer advocate for Outsetter and has a prolific live stream with her husband, Ula, where they build awesome stuff on the Jamstack. Queen, excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. What the jam?
That's
Pump
it.
up the jam.
So let's start off with the big one. What does Jamstack mean to you?
I think for me, Jamstack was a way to let me focus on just the joy of creating on the web. I could build, push to GitHub, and all of that other stuff just like happened magically. And for me at that time, that was pretty awesome. Like I wasn't a full stack engineer at the time. I built lots of like WordPress sites. I was also working, or I guess at that time I made my money off of making iPhone apps. And if you've ever tried to get an iPhone app into the app store, like it is a process. I hope it's gotten easier. So when I was like doing my side projects, I've always had side projects. Like it's my creative outlet. It's kind of where I get to do like answer all of my creative questions. Like I'm like, can you do this? And then I'll try to make it. And most of that was then on the on WordPress because I just wanted, something that was worked and where kind of the setup of servers and all of that kind of thing was done for me. But as we know, like running a WordPress site, it inevitably kind of like falls down because you need the security updates and you have to like keep at it. And I think I also wanted to branch out a little bit of kind of that way of building things because I was more interested in like building utility applications more than building websites. So I did make some kind of cool, I think one is still running where we had like this, you can see if a fish is sustainable or not. And I ended up, I
Awesome.
managed to kind of make an app like on top of WordPress that was like some JavaScript. I don't know what I used at that time. Some JavaScript, so it like felt like an app, but it was still like pulling the data from WordPress. But then I came over, the concept of the Jamstack, or actually I came over Netlify, and just that like blew my mind. Just like not having to think about the servers or the operation sides and just being able to like focus on the joy of creating, pushing it to GitHub and let somebody else take care of what I would call at that time the boring part. Right now, I want to get a Raspberry Pi and figure out how to make Netlify under my desk because I never did that as a tech teenager. Like I was always more on the kind of the creative side of things and not so much on like building your own hardware. And I always felt a little not self-confident. That's the opposite of confident. Self-conscious when it comes to when you talk to the dudes who've all like build their own stuff. And so I kind of shied away from all of that like operational side of things. But now I want to dig in, but that's a digression. But so
I feel like that's
joy of creating.
That's the perfect way to do it as well, is rather than I want to learn like infrastructure or hardware, it's like here's something I want to achieve. There's my goal and I'm going to figure out all the pieces to get there. I think that's awesome.
So, and now I don't know why, but now I'm like, I want to figure out like, obviously I'm not going to be able to make Netlify, but like the basics of it, like how could I have a little machine that will ping GitHub or like get a webhook from GitHub, grab those files, do the build step, and then deploy on my little Raspberry Pi? It should be pretty doable. Like, but for me, I don't know why, but like hardware and operations, I've just classed it as for the better engineers or the proper engineers or I don't know why, but like it feels like that's like a different realm and it's not for me. And I like to break down every now and then, be like, but why? Like I could probably learn some of this if I tried. So it's on my to-do list.
I think like the deeper your knowledge as well, the better. Like let's say you do want to stay in like building applications, like it's all useful information and helps you, right? Like I love that.
And
That's
also maybe
awesome.
like lets you appreciate Netlify, for instance, or like the
Mm,
other, now there are several competitors, but when Netlify came, they were the only one that I found, at least, and that was that simple and focused on the simplicity. And I think kind of, if you didn't experience the before, you
yeah,
don't really appreciate, the simplicity of deployment these days.
that's it. You're
And
like, I just push to GitHub and it's live. You don't go through the pain of FTP or uh,
and like,
WordPress
what version
updates.
is it? And like, what if I want to roll
Yeah.
back? What happened to it's all, all of that. It's just, and then it could be fun to then, try to build pieces of it and then in a way understand and appreciate the effort that's put into these platforms a little bit
That's it.
more.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was when you first came into the Jamstack, what were you using at the time?
Yeah. So I was basically on WordPress. And then I think I started listening to Jamstack Radio. Now
Yeah.
that probably came later because I don't know how this came about. Like, I should have written more blog posts back then. I didn't. But I have a project that has been deployed to Netlify since last time it was deployed, it was 2018. And I think maybe if I look at my notes, I think it was deployed first time 2016. Um, so it's an audio guide. I had some friends come and they wanted to create audio guides, or location-based radio, they called it,
Mm,
where it's not always a guide, but it could be more of like an art piece, but where you should be in the location and then listening to the audio for that location. And their like theory is also that they often interview the person in that location. So that will make the conversation more exciting and more interesting than just like interviewing them in their office
wow.
about whatever it is. So they came to me and they were like, could we do this? Because I was at the time using WordPress for my side project, but then I was also doing iPhone apps. Well, I did have some side project on iPhone apps as well. Now that I come to think of it. So they came to me and they were like, hey, we want to do this. And I was like, well, I really wanted to get back to the web and like the web as a platform, because
Mm,
it was a lot of fun making iPhone apps, but then you had, the iPhone versus the Android and just the pain of deploying, like we talked about. Like, it just became such a thing. And I was like, we should be able to play audio on the web. I started like hearing things about progressive web applications, and picked up things, and I can no longer pinpoint like where and when. So for some reason, I decided to create this audio guide in Jekyll as the static site generator.
nice.
And for a paid project I was doing for the National Authorities of Energy and Water, I think they're called, the National Department of Energy and Water, I was making a hybrid iPhone Android app in Ionic, which was then on
Mm,
Angular. So it was a way to create hybrid apps. So I was like, so that's probably why I was like leaning more into the web again. I was like, okay, web was my baby once. Like, that's where I grew up. This iPhone thing was a little side path, and I want to get back to the web. So I created this then in Jekyll. So because I wanted all of the audio, or like the locations, to be independent pages, so people could search for one location or link to one location. But then if they start playing the audio on that location and start walking and want to kind of look at the map or look at the other locations, I wanted the audio to still play,
mm,
like, so if you do a page reload, the audio stops. So
mm,
then I was like, how can I make this happen? I've been working with this hybrid app. So then I decided, okay, what if I like put a Angular application inside of the static site that's generated with the data needed, and then when that first page has loaded, I'll turn it into an Angular application that then listens to the changes in history, and then it becomes what I later came to know as single page application, and that
yeah.
concept of hydration. So, I was statically generating with Jekyll, and then I was rehydrating it into Angular.
Wow.
And
You
it's
were
still running. It's
That's
still running.
awesome.
I'll
You're
give
ahead of
you
the
the
curve.
URL.
Like you were Gatsby before Gatsby.
I mean, now I'm like, why didn't I make a framework? But at
Yes.
that time, I did not have the trust in myself, or like the trust in my abilities, that this was like revolutionary. And then I think I started listening to the Jamstack Radio, and they were like pushing Gatsby. And but before Gatsby, I was looking into Nuxt, I guess, with Vue, because I
Mhm.
really like the Vue documentation. So I was like, this is pretty cool. So I kind of wanted to go that way. But then the money in Oslo, where I live at the time, was React. So that's where I kind of was like, okay, I'll do Gatsby because then I can also learn React, and React is a sellable skill in Oslo. So that's how I had a it was Jekyll, my personal framework, Jekyll plus Angular 1, I guess it even was. Or was it 2? I don't even know. And then I had a brief little turn into Vue and Next, and then I ended up on Gatsby, probably thanks to the Jamstack radio that I was listening to at the time.
Yeah, interesting
Yeah.
that journey. So what do you use? What do you use now? Like, what's your go-to?
Oh, I'm so conflicted these days. No, I'm not conflicted anymore. I feel like Astro is really what gives me that joy again. Like it gives me the joy of creation, and also getting me all the way back to the start where I can focus on just the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, even use vanilla JavaScript again, but I can still get the benefits of static, so that I can build things like this audio guide that we were talking about that can potentially just run there on a server on somewhere for ever and ever without me touching it. So I really, really like that. I mean, I was a big Gatsby fan. We kind of built a live streaming show where we did deep dives into Gatsby. That's where like the Queen name, and you were mentioning my partner, he's the captain, and we like had lots of fun, and we had lots of the Gatsby engineers on, and we wanted to build Gatsby plugins because I thought that we would see that the Gatsby plugin ecosystem would kind of move in the direction that the WordPress plugin ecosystem moved, where you have professional plugins and people will kind of buy plugins and that kind of thing. That prediction was wrong, because that is not what happened. But I'm seeing similar things happening in Esther now with like they have a theme marketplace, and I'm thinking maybe they'll get a better kind of system around the extensions. I think they have a little bit of it. I'm pretty new to Astro though. That's just been like the last couple of months. But I'm really liking the vibe. I feel like you were saying what was good with the Jamstack. It was that vibe, like focus on just like creating things and like getting them out there and deploy. Like anybody could deploy. Like deploying wasn't scary anymore. And I feel like a lot of the same thing is happening with Astro. But I gotta keep myself in check, because it's easy to suddenly not be static anymore. Same thing happened with Gatsby. I was like, oh, we're making static sites, and then suddenly they like snuck in features that were Gatsby cloud specific, and I was like, well, now we're not. Like, where are we now? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about that. What is happening?
What I don't know. So my partner Ola, who learned to code through Gatsby, really, in like that environment, he had his personal site, or his like experiment site on Gatsby Cloud, and then we all had to move over to Netlify when Netlify bought Gatsby, and the site stopped working. And it turns out like he was playing around with deferred static generation for some of his pages, which then is no longer the deferred static generation in Gatsby. Was that you say, okay, let's not generate all the pages up front, but we'll generate it as soon as somebody asks for it. So when somebody asks for it, it's generated, and then it's never generated again. But that had to happen through a serverless function of some sort that they deployed. So when he moved it over, it wasn't working, because then he didn't have the right plugin, or there were like some things, and he's not the most patient with things like that. So he's just like, I'm just making another one. I just make a new site. So I think he's making a new one now with Astro. But I felt like, and because we kind of morphed into, Gatsby was changing, and we thought, well, we love the Jamstack, so we started playing off of the word that we are Jamstack pirates. We even have Jamstack pirate stickers. Maybe I'll send you one.
Ooh.
But then I was like, can we call ourselves like Jamstack pirates anymore? Like if we're now leaning into Astro, and I also love the server-side rendering side parts of Astro, because for some projects that's what you need, right? We're building an app now where you can pick episodes from different podcasts and create new podcasts, or mix pods that we call them, like a nod to
Oh, awesome.
mixtapes. And their, server-side rendering makes much more sense, at least for some of the pages, because people will need to pick these episodes and we need to save them to a database and we need to, it's more of an application. And can I then say that we're still the Jamstack pirates? I don't know. I guess that's what you're trying to figure out. Do you think I can
Yeah.
could you think
So
we can still call ourselves Jamstack pirates?
It's like that is at the heart of everything I'm trying to figure out, and I think you put it so well. Where I feel like to what you're experiencing there, where you're almost having like an identity crisis
Oh,
because you want to,
literally having an identity
yeah,
crisis, because I was
like
like,
this,
the Jamstack. Like, I love the I guess, again, like I said, it was the creator in me that kind of loved the vibe of the community more than like the exact technologies.
yeah.
But
And I
then
think
suddenly some technologies became the Jamstack, and then sorry, I keep on.
no, I think you said it so well there. Like, and it's what I've heard over and over again with these conversations. Is it's like the people and the community was what people really liked, and like it's a meme, but like the vibe of
The
Jamstack.
vibe.
But like,
I feel
do
like
you,
the vibe was like early internet that I've been looking for
yeah,
since my early days of being 13 years old, and my friend and I would like go out on the internet and we would make collages of photos we found on the internet and then send them to each other as desktop backgrounds. And it was
yeah,
it was
yeah,
like this weird. And I know we have had Salma on, and her new her newsletter now is called the world, no, the weird
weird,
wide web hole
yeah,
or something like that. And I just, yeah, it's something that like creative spirit where it's more about having fun and creating and seeing like the joy in everything. And I felt that with the Jamstack, and I felt that with some of the players in the space. Like the joy is not there. It's much more of that kind of like, I would call it more the like tech bro-y, like this is the fastest, bestest, like we are the coolest kind of vibe. But I feel like Astro, the community around Astro has more of that, like the joy of creating again. But it's hard. Like I don't want to lean too much on them either, because I don't want to be tied to like one company for that vibe.
yeah. And that's exactly what we're trying to figure out. Is is there some sort of umbrella, and if there is, what is the core of that umbrella? Because like I think one of the issues with Jamstack is exactly what you're experiencing there. It's like you almost feel guilty of not doing something static when it makes perfect sense for your use case to
Hmm.
render dynamically. Like you shouldn't. I feel like something's gone wrong if and I've, I've experienced this, and so many people I've talked to have. Like if you're like, well, I need to use dynamic here, but I feel like I'm betraying Jamstack. Like we should
Yeah,
just
and
be
like
able to pick the
I feel like it's the right technological choice, but can I then do a stream about it and be like Jamstack pirates? That's
yeah.
that's where I'm conflicted. Like I'm not conflicted about choosing a different stack, but like can I call it like you're saying, the
That's it.
is it the Jamstack? Yeah. We made stickers even for Jamstack pirates. I
Hell
brought
yes.
these with me to the Jamstack Conf in San Francisco. I think it was the last Jamstack Conf before it became like the composable web. I have a couple of these, so anyone
Wow,
watching,
hot commodity.
DM me on Twitter, and you might get one. These are actually they're made by it's a paper collage made by Ula, my partner, and then we scanned it, and it's deep. But we have like, I don't know, we might get copyrighted. No, because that's not a Netlify's logo. That's the Jamstack logo. That I don't think you can see it, but it's like the Jamstack logo is the eye, and then the I guess that's not copyrighted. You own this now, I guess, or like the
No, 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 no.
community own this.
I don't own anything.
You don't own
But
anything. No.
I don't think anyone's gonna come after you for a Jamstack logo in the eye of a pirate.
Well, you never know. You don't know that. I actually gave one of these to Matt Billman while I was
Yeah.
in
I think if you
San
did that, you're in the
Francisco.
clear.
Yeah, he's not gonna sue me, I think. But yeah, for those not in the know, he is the founder of Netlify and coined the term Jamstack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
the secret. You gotta give them a sticker and then it's all
Yeah.
good.
We also have this Jamstack pirate one. It says Jamstack pirate.
Oh, that's
And it's a
awesome.
little, but I like this one best. Like this is super cool. Anyway, that was
Yeah.
a digression, but I'll send you one.
But that highlights the Jamstack vibe, I think. Like just fun and creating stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, just I feel like I really felt that coming from WordPress is suddenly you're not bogged down by all this heavy templating and framework. Like you are free to create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes it just like you can make any silly little thing because it's not like I still think WordPress is the right choice for a lot of people.
Hmm.
I myself won't make websites anymore. I may, for people, but if I were to do it, I would probably, well, at this point, I would probably just ask them to use one of the no-code tools because they are super good these days.
Yeah.
And are they the Jamstack? I mean, Framer. Have you used Framer?
I haven't. Tell me.
I've been live streaming with Framer this week, and that actually hydrates into a React application.
Interesting.
But I do think because they have pages, and I think the pages render without the JavaScript running. I have not looked into this enough, like on the backside of it, but you just drop things on the canvas and it just looks beautiful. It's like Figma, I think. It's like I've never used Figma, but it feels like it's like the designers use Figma. You just drop like things on there, you write on there, like everything is what you see is what you get. But then you can select any of these things that you put on there and you can create a code override, which is a higher order React component around it. And then suddenly you can code features on top of this thing that you drew on the canvas.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like best of both worlds.
Talk about creative and being able to create stuff. Like for me, I create best in code. Like code is my, I don't know, medium. If that, painters have different like artists have
Yeah,
different
yeah.
mediums, we have different mediums. So code is the way, like that's how I get creative and I get my ideas. But think about what like somebody who comes from the design side and learns a little bit of code or connects with the coder can create in tools like Framer. And then it's like, could they be part of our
Yeah,
community, our
it's an interesting
Jamstack?
question, eh?
They
Yeah.
be a Jamstack pirate.
Yeah. So let's talk about the arc of Jamstack.
Mm.
Like you came in Jamstack Radio, got into Jekyll and Gatsby. How have you seen Jamstack kind of evolve since then?
Yeah, I feel like in the beginning it was very pure. Like I've heard you talk about with other people where we had the big jam. The J and the A and the M was capitalized and it was JavaScript APIs and Markdown. And I don't remember her name now. You can like put it on the screen or in the description. Did a great talk at that last time StackConf about how we forgot CSS in there. Like we also had, the styling and being able to just style. You have your standard web stack, right? You just
Yeah.
put it on the page, you host it. It's fine. Like you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to wrap or build or anything if you don't want to. But then I guess it became a marketing term for Netlify. Like they took more hold of it. It became a marketing term, and then it would have to market anything that they put out. And I don't think it's wrong for Netlify to put out what they put out. Like we all need serverless functions every now and then. We don't always want to be running our own server, even though I am now like looking into that because I want to be able to do that. And we've had new competitors, or not competitors, but new players in the space like Railway that really lets you ease, like with the same ease, you push to GitHub, boom, it's up and running, and like you have a node server and everything. And that came later than I thought. Like that took longer than I would have thought because like Netlify came and did that for static sites or whatever you want to call them now, but at least with no backend. But being able to do something like that, I guess you could on Heroku, but Heroku was always fickle for me. Like there
Yeah,
was
I
always
agree.
something going wrong. But with Railway, I've had this this bot going for, I guess, a year and a half, and I haven't touched it. I can't even log in now because they did something wrong with my logins, but it's still running. But back to your question, is that then it became kind of a term for anything that they created and that they wanted to offer of services. And we're seeing this across the whole space, is that the money is in enterprise. Like, the money is not in me creating this audio guide that has been running since 2016. And I do have a paid Netlify account at this point, but like, it could have run on a free one if I didn't want like multiple people and multiple projects. So obviously, like, that was the path that they needed to go down, but then they kind of brought the Jamstack term with them down kind of the enterprise path. And I feel like a lot of us were more in that we talk about, like the creative, like we just wanted to make fun project, like indie hacking, or just like art projects. Really, like a lot of the things we make as web developers that are kind of in our circles, I would classify more as like art or a hobby than something we do for money, right? And you're not going to make a ton of money off of us. So I understand why Netlify went down that route. And then at some point, I think they realized then that it didn't serve their needs. Like, they have a brand, which is Netlify. Why, like, when are they Jamstack? When are they Netlify? And they kind of severed those ties. So I guess that was the arc. What I think about it or what I feel about it is just that I don't know if we can use the term.
Yeah.
But I'm not, like, at least I am not angry at how it all went down. Like, I understand the need for a business to make money, and that was the logical, natural path for them. But
Yeah. So
they also bought Gatsby, and nothing has happened, which is a little annoying. But I see why.
Yeah. So if we can go back in time, like, where do you feel like if we could just take the core of Jamstack at that point and build something around that?
Mm-hmm.
What is that, and what time period do you think it was?
I feel like it was before Next came on the scene or became like a super big player, because before that, all Next and Gatsby, and they were all focused on the static generation. Like, it was super focused on static generation, and that's what was the point of it, and that's what they were making. And then Netlify added on serverless functions, but then that was like a part of Netlify. It was not part of the framework, so it's very like
Yeah.
separated. So it could have been any backend as a service, right? Because sometimes I've also built projects where, the front is a static site or a static app, and then you talk to a service or a backend of some sorts for those parts. So then, but you still had that clear separation, and you could choose then to use Netlify functions, or you could choose to use a backend as a service, or
Yeah.
spin up your own server. And I didn't follow, because I never kind of went the route of learning Next, so I don't have like intimate familiarity with Next. But I feel like when they came on the scene and they kind of said like, we're Jamstack, or it felt like they were like in the mix, but they were not being statically generated mostly, or from the beginning. I'm not certain how that history went. Then all the other frameworks wanted to kind of have feature parity, and I feel like that's when it started being like, well, now all of these frameworks are full stack frameworks, and they kind of do all of them, and a lot of it is bundled into the framework, so you can't like really host it anywhere than their hosting platform. The same thing happened to Gatsby, where you could only really host it on Gatsby Cloud, and Netlify had to reverse engineer lots of things without documentation. Like, they just had to figure it out to be able to host it on their own site. And that is one distinction I see with Astro, is that it seems like they've always had these open adapters. So for this project that I was saying, where we're like leaning into server-side rendering for Mixpod, we are even leaning into kind of hosting it with Docker on Railways. We have our own database, and we're using what the guy called TinyStack. That was like circling the Twitter just to like explore that. So it feels like kind of Astro has features where you need these kind of server functions and stuff, but at least you're not tied to kind of their hosting offering.
Yeah.
Like, it's an open, what's it called? Open API or open.
Yeah. I mean, in one of
standard.
the panels, we talked about being portable and just not
Hmm.
being tied to a service. Like, I think that's kind of in the same vein. So
Yeah.
how do you think that there's like two things we're trying to balance here? Like, one is to your point around like identity, like not feeling guilty for using the best tool for the job. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that should be at the core of the community. Like, it's not
Hmm.
Jamstack or nothing. But then also having a community that's centralized around a core idea. Because I think
Hmm.
one of the issues I see with Jamstack is it's so wide now
Mm.
that it's just like everything, and then it loses meaning because of that. So how
Yeah.
do you think we balance those two things? I feel like that's
Oh,
kind
I
of
would love
what we
to
need to
know,
figure out.
because then I would know how to brand myself, no, or our show at
Yeah,
least. Because we kind of stopped using the term Jamstack, and we moved more over to, we're just web dev pirates, I
yeah.
guess is what we landed on. Where for me, the important part since leaving the app or the iOS world was like leaning into the web as a platform and leaning into like all of the features and being, vigilant about the craft behind proper semantically structured HTML and
Hmm.
the features we get from the new CSS, and like leaning into the web as a platform, I think is what is important for me. And also that creative piece of it, and like hanging out with other people that want to just create like cool and fun stuff um outside of their job sometimes, even, or like more as a creative outlet. um so maybe like that is not the gems. Like maybe it is web dev pirates. I don't know. Maybe that's what we all should lean into. No.
Yeah.
Use my term. No.
I'm
But I
not
would love to like
opposed. I
bring
like it.
all of the Jamstack people over to being web dev pirates instead, because I feel like, so my partner has looked into like pirates, and I should have asked him more about this now, but there was like, I mean, they did loot people, but there were also this sense of freedom and like
Yeah.
being able to roam the waters. And I think they had like like a pretty kind of like democratic system within, like the captain is the captain, but like there wasn't this like hierarchy, society, I can't say this, society hierarchies. And there's also evidence of like a lot of pretty cool women pirates who just kind of
Mm.
joined them and were treated as equals instead of staying home in England or wherever. So there's like a cool vibe to pirates that I didn't think about, because we often hear about the kind of the looting and the violence and like that part of it. So that, yeah, I don't know, like I don't know, that's for you, or for us to figure out. I guess that's what you're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the pirate stuff. Like that is really fun and awesome. And I feel like that's, you said it earlier, like that's what we need more of in this space. And I think your stream is a fantastic example of that. Um, there's like the exact name, I'm not sure of, but there's two ideas that I flip flop between every
Hmm.
day. One is that this is a community about pre-building websites. Um, and it's not saying that you should pre-build absolutely everything and it's a silver bullet, but it's a community of people who really believe in that and want to do that as much as possible. And that like kind of goes back to OG Jamstack as well.
Hmm.
Then the other one is similar, but a little bit different, where it's more of like the pursuit to getting more static,
Hmm.
and always try and build things as static as possible. So like Astro is a good example of that. If it's just a static like homepage and then you have dynamic functionality on another page, build the homepage static, dynamic for the other pages. Or you can also, it can be pretty nuanced. Like with a WordPress site, one way to make that more static is adding a CDN in front of it and
Hmm.
caching. So
Hmm.
it's like more about what a like philosophy of what can we do to make this more static.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, at its core, I think they could both work. The static one, as long as the community is dogmatic about like it's not static, so it's not good. I think that could work. But as soon as like if it does get into that, like, well, it's not static, blah 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 blah, like I think that's then we fall into a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about those two ideas?
I mean, for me personally, moving forward, like I want to keep the community, like personally, and
Yeah.
that is more important to me than whatever technical definition it is.
Yeah.
Because I also remember like the first Gatsby tutorials were also like super beginner friendly. They at one point I was like, if you're going to learn web development, just start with that page because you will end up with something that you can deploy more than, I mean, you can teach people to create handcrafts an HTML site with CSS and JavaScript. And I do think there is a place to like going through the fundamentals, but there are also a place for people who need to like get something out there and like ship it and like see it out there in the world that is a little bit more substantial than that. And they had like the step by step, and kind of the mental model was super clear. You know, these things are built, and what you're sending over to Netlify or whatever, like are these files. Like you can see it being generated, and you can see the end result. And I've seen when the other features came, and I've also seen when people have been using Next, it's that, and we'll probably see it more in Astro as well when like the feature set, and like it's that people have a really hard time with the mental model of what is happening on the client, what is happening on the server, and at what point is it happening, and that is giving a lot of weird like bugs that wouldn't have happened if that like mental model was a lot clearer. You see it like especially around like secrets being leaked because you know, you can have that secret on the server, like when the page is rendering on the server, that secret is okay, but when it's rendering in the client, that secret is not okay. And so that's also a thing that I immediately liked with Astro, even though it's super weird, is that like that server JavaScript needs to happen between those front matter lines, like dash, 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 dash. Within those lines, that is what happening on the server. If you're putting in a JavaScript underneath that, that will be happening in the client. So I feel like they've made that mental model clearer for folks coming in. Or even for myself, like I've also had like, when is this happening? Like it's all React code. I don't know when, like what, and it's not that it's not technically cool and it works, but having been a contractor for many years, and seeing like how React is used and stuff like that, is that those mental models are hard. Like even after years of experience, while you're like in there coding, you forget about, is this the server? Is it the client? And like weird bugs start happening. And I don't think it is necessarily a skill issue. It's an abstraction issue.
Like it'd be so easy just to miss, like just not be thinking about one because it's all blended together. And then
and you don't always know, like you're working in a component, like you're not working on the page, you're working in the component, and then like you have to think about all these things that could happen to this component. And so I just seen that is hard. That is hard. What was your original question? It was,
so is it
if it has to be static? Was that the question?
Like at the core, what resonates more with you? Like purely a community, a static site website, no, static site fan club, or a static first philosophy community?
Yeah, and then I feel like it's more like web first community, or like the web as a platform.
I really
is
like
the community
that one too.
I'm looking for, or I want to be a part of, because I think like I still love React, and there's room for React in lots of cases, but I really like that with Astro that is a choice. I still really think that Gatsby was on the right path with a lot of things. Like their data layer is just amazing, and a lot of people left Gatsby or didn't like Gatsby because of the data layer, because they got some abstractions wrong as well, like how you access the data layer. And I am really, really hoping that Astro comes out with something similar, but just more like simplistic or like more straightforward.
Mm.
But that concept that you can just source all the data and then you have that in your like little mini build DB. Like it's not a real database, but it was actually a real database, but it's not there to be deployed, but it's there for the build. So you know exactly what data you are building off of, and you can like look into that data and fix the issues while looking at the data that is going to generate your site, instead of having to wait for the site to be generated and then be like, oh, this is not what I expected, or something like that. But with Gatsby, you had to use React, and then you didn't kind of keep that focus on the web as a platform, and you ended up making a lot of websites that probably shouldn't have been rehydrated into single page applications, having to rehydrate into single page applications. While in Astro, you can kind of choose. I mean, you can create a static Astro site that hydrates into a single page application, or it can be static, but you have a page reload when you move through the site, or through the site. So yeah, I think like for me, focus on web. Don't be, is it like web as the platform, like web as the framework, I guess is the slogan I've seen thrown around.
Yeah. No, I think I feel like that will resonate with a lot of this community, because when you are like handcrafting these websites, which with an SSG, much more than with WordPress, people are handcrafting, like you you're so much more conscious of the code and what is being sent down the pipe, and trying to get it as accessible and fast and just semantic and nice to maintain as possible. And that for me comes like Stephanie Eccles put it really well, where it's called like she said it's become a radical idea to build on the bare metal of the browser. And I agree. Like, why is that radical? That should be the default. And then if you need
I
abstraction
know.
on top of it, then sure.
And I think what I've seen as a contractor and seen juniors who came up through React, that is one of the things that they lost. And because I came in, I was like, well, maybe that should be an article tag. And they're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
there's different tags, and these were not really, they were, I would say they have like 4 or 5 years experience in the field and after education, but it's never been the focus in the project. The large enterprise projects that they are part of, there is a component library. And a
Yeah.
lot of those component libraries don't allow you to choose which HTML tag is the tag that will be rendered, because it's more focused on the look of it and the functionality of it, and then the underlying semantic. So I was blown away of kind of how little understanding there was of that part of the stack.
Yeah.
But they can
Whereas
ship
it's
pretty big, cool stuff. So I ended up writing an article about semantic HTML in React, or like a trick for semantic HTML in React, which I learned from Mu, which is like a material design UI design library that you can use for React applications. And all of their components, it has a default HTML element, and then you can always send it the element that you want it to be rendered as. And that is my most viewed article ever.
yeah.
And I've been thinking, when
That's
I was
great
still
that
like
people
more,
are like, it's great that people are looking for that. That's awesome.
I think as soon as you mention it, they're like, oh wow, and they're like, they go digging, and they really, I've not had anybody tell me like, well, I don't care. More like, wow, I never thought about that. Like, that is interesting. And I think also a lot of the younger people that I saw, like, they care about accessibility and that part of it, but they haven't had the I don't know, they just haven't been exposed to that side of it,
Exactly.
because
Whereas
so many things are.
I feel like it should be the first thing you learn. Like, here is the like very basics of HTML. Here's all the tags. This is why you want to use this tag in this situation.
Mm,
Here's basic CSS, and like build on top of that rather than jumping straight into
yeah,
React.
but there's no DevRels for that. There's no
Yeah.
money in that.
That's
But
it. That's what it
that I
comes
think
down
that
to.
is basically what it is, because all of the educational effort, effort that is coming out of companies are to push their tool, which is exactly what they are supposed to do. But we are kind of lacking the DevRels of the web fundamentals.
It's it.
And I would love to be one of those, but like there's only so much time you have, and you need to get paid, and they don't pay. Like the W3C, the people who are on the boards, I guess, get paid, but there is no kind of consolidated DevRel effort around that, and I think that makes it so that it becomes like second tier knowledge, or like it's harder to come by that organically when you are kind of exploring and learning the web stuff. Like that is not what you're seeing in your feed at all times.
Yeah, I feel like that brings this conversation full circle, because I think it's also why all of these frameworks and platforms got more into serverless and dynamic, because it's like you can have a huge website as a static site and put it on one of these services and pay a very small amount. But you take that same website and add a whole lot of dynamic stuff, and you can charge a lot for it. And ultimately, like that's like companies are going to follow the money like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Let's end on that.
Let's end on that. I totally forgot to talk about the I just need to plug this.
Yeah, plug away.
Before we plug away, is that like a path of my story here was that at one point before we started the Gatsby show, which was kind of like a pandemic initiative where we started live streaming with Gatsby, I created POW, which is a privacy first menstrual cycle application or journal, I guess is the tagline. Use POW, that app. And kind of like the concepts of the Jamstack let me or kind of gave me the confidence that I could ship that, because that is a backend as a service, and then it's a Gatsby site that I pushed to Netlify, and I didn't have to like think about all of those operational pieces and kind of know those pieces. I feel like that, yeah, the vibe of the Jamstack, or not the vibe, even the tech, like gave me the confidence that I could push out an application and know that it would be up, and I wouldn't have to spend. It could be a side project because I don't have to spend every day making sure that my servers are up, the servers are up and running, or things like that.
Yeah.
So I forgot that in the full story. I'm like, this is one of my coolest projects, and I was like, let's not talk about that.
I mean, it's a great example because it's like an app like that, it's going to be hard to monetize, like for the platform that it's on to monetize. Mm-hmm. But you think if you measure like in terms of impact on the world, like it's amazing, right? And we should be promoting and trying to encourage people to build more apps like that. And
the cool thing about it is that web encryption is part of the platform now. So all of the data is encrypted and decrypted in the browser.
Oh, awesome.
Using the standard APIs.
Yeah, that's really cool. So like in the database, you have no way of accessing that data at all. Only the client can.
Only the client can. And that is also why it is a great case for React, because I cannot server-side render anything, because that would just look like a jumbled mess. Like it's not, because it's all encrypted in the database. Or before, it's not encrypted at rest, because most databases encrypt data, but it's encrypted at what they call encrypted at rest. So it's sent to the database and then encrypted with the key that the server side of things has. But when it's end-to-end encrypted, only the person with the password on the client can decrypt and encrypt. And so there, like, it just made like a lot of sense for creating a React application. And then I used Gatsby to kind of bootstrap and bundle it, because that's what I knew. So yeah, that was a fun project.
That is a cool project. Really cool. All right, Queen, thank you so much for joining today. This was great.
It's been fun. And I hope we figure it out and keep the community going. I don't want to lose everyone.
This conversation's a part of it.
That's it for today's interview. Find out more at thefutureofjamstack.org.